Hey folks, Steve here with a special unboxing video for you today. We're going to be looking at Compass Games' reissue or designer signature edition of the Third World War. And this is a game that I've been waiting for a few years, and I know that a lot of folks were excited to get this. This is another one of the designer signature edition games they've been doing. So we look at I think the first one that I got was Korean War from them, but they've done a few other games that are these souped up reprints, re-releases of classic games or what are seen to be very good games. And Compass is not the only publisher doing that. There are a lot of other companies that are getting new editions of older great games out. It seems to be a lot of those lately, and I feel very fortunate for that, because it's going to allow me to play games that, previously the older editions were just a whole lot harder to get a hold of, or were very expensive, or you kind of had to buy in bulk. And in this case, I guess it helps people like me in two ways. One, there's just a new version available, and then this also ends up driving some folks to sell their older copies, which, I mean, if you can't afford this, then you can always try to buy the older versions that are now probably going for sale. So this is ultimately a collection of what was really 4 games. You can see the titles here: Arctic Front, Battle for Germany, Southern Front, and Persian Gulf. These came as 4 separate games way back in the day, and they've all been sort of refined, updated in terms of the components and all that good stuff, and put into one big package. The game's certainly heavy, and maybe a little on the expensive side. I had mine paid a couple of years ago, because Compass Games at one point accidentally charged a bunch of customers as they were moving from one pre-order system to a new one, and some customers had their credit cards charged accidentally, and you had the option of just getting a refund really quick. They fixed it. They were like really on top of it, so good on Compass for doing that. It was their mistake, or there was a mistake made somewhere, or a system acted in a way that was not expected, but they were really on top of helping people out, it seemed like to me. I said, don't worry about me. I'll take the charge. Just send me my games when they're ready. I'll trust you guys. And sure enough, they sent me my copy. So here it is. We'll crack this guy open and take a look inside. There's still a packing peanut stuck to the front of it. Got that off. So this has a huge number of components. So it's going to be a little difficult for us to just get an awesome look at everything, because I don't want this video to be, an hour long. So the box is sort of standard Compass. It's not like super duper thick like you might find in some deluxe games, but it's certainly sufficient for the game itself. Nothing too crazy. I guess I should, before we get too excited, show the back of the box just so you guys have a chance to see. So I think they published this on the Kickstarter page, so you can read all of that. If you want to pause, I'll let you do that. You can see examples of some of the counters here, which we'll see in a second, and some shots of some of the maps, not all of the maps. There are a lot of maps in this game, to be sure. So we get a Compass catalog, valid until 1/25, so catalog discounts are past, so not sure this was useful, but nice to take a look at things. We've got the U.S. diplomacy cards and the Soviet diplomacy cards. These are used as part of the Persian Gulf module of this. So there's this, you can see an example, I guess. Soviet Union can choose to play this card, which is denounce Israel, and if they do, it shifts countries in the Persian Gulf map and module one direction or the other. So if you denounce Israel, then Syria and Iraq will shift more towards the Soviets, but Israel will obviously shift more towards the U.S. And there's a lot of cards that are in here that are like that. So you can see there are the U.S. cards, there will be the Soviet cards. Play those. So it adds some replayability. This system I should say the game, by the way, is designed by Frank Chadwick, who's also known for like Thunder in the East and some of the newer ETO series game stuff. But you know, this is something that is his design from way back in the day in the 80s. So anyway, so yeah, this adds some replayability. Is actually sort of the origin for what eventually I think became Days of Decision for World in Flame. So there's sort of a design lineage there in terms of this political, you know, you take an option where you choose an action out of this list of cards, which makes the decisions really easy. You can just look at all the cards and decide what you want to do, and it affects the game diplomacy that will eventually determine how the map plays out. Get some standard dice, nothing too crazy there. And we're going to go through a ton of player aid cards, so I may move kind of quickly through this. You can see this is a air track. It's a air display. You can see it covers the different theaters, so Southwest Theater, Western Asia, Persian Gulf, Balkan. No back, so you would set this up near your maps to show which air units have air superiority, or in the air superiority box, fighting for air superiority, are available, have been flown, were shot down, or grounded. And if you look at like this, and I think a few other game systems, I think the air system will probably feel very familiar to folks that even if you've not played this game, because I think the air system has generally been either, you know, modified or inspired, or, you know, if this is not the origin of the air system used, it is certainly in the same family as a lot of other games. This is a NATO version, so you can see Northern Theater, Eastern Europe, Western European Theater. Looks like this is another one, a duplicate one. I'm not sure if that is intended or not. If there should be a different one, so that's sort of something I should look at. These are identical. So there's Eastern. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not identical. My bad. It looks like there is a difference. So there's. No, they are identical. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. It's been a long week. Yeah. So this is a duplicate. I don't know if that's intended or not, but we'll worry about that in time. We have the Rulebook now. Whoops. You can see it's matte paper, non-glossy, though it is pretty smooth for matte, and it's 2-column, full color. So this rulebook's clocking in at 44 pages. Obviously, the index doesn't necessarily count all the way, but there's a lot in here. Obviously, there's special rules. You're going to have a bunch of the air rules. There's examples, small examples in line with the text, which is always really good. Unit descriptions. There's a QR code, which is interesting. I suppose that'll take you right to the game website. And I think if you look at the table of contents, that gives you a sense of the stuff that you're going to be trying to learn if you're not familiar with this game. So sequence of play, talking about zones of control and how they work, stacking, movement, ground combat, regrouping, isolation, the air war, grounding supply, air transport and airborne results, naval transport and amphibious assaults, weather, special rules, neutrals. I imagine that's like political rules for neutrals, critical losses, surrender, new units. So how do new units come on the board? The diplomacy game for the Persian Gulf and campaign game, the scenario information around victory conditions and victory points, the theaters of operation, nuclear warfare. Some of these things are optional. Chemical warfare, Romanian operations, winter conditions, tactical advantage, which is an optional. So there's a lot that gets you just through. I mean, you're talking maybe 30 pages of regular rules, and then you've got a series of another 10 pages or so of optional, or it's supposed to be looked at as like campaign rules. We have the playbook. You say, well, if what is in the playbook if the scenario information is in the rulebook? Well, there's a lot of content. This is a thick book here, coming in at 80 pages. 81 if you count the faction abbreviation breakdown. It's got a sequence of play on the back. Another 2-column format book. If we look at the table of contents, okay, so this is where the true content of the scenarios are contained. So I guess that section of the rule book is just to explain how to read the scenario information. Here's where you really have the bulk of things, right? So there's Battle for Germany, Southern Front, Arctic Front, Persian Gulf, Battle for Germany plus the Southern Front, Battle for Germany plus the Arctic Front, the War in Europe, or the big combined game. And there's some development notes, which are always interesting to read. Doesn't look like, yeah, there's about 2 full pages of those. I always really like reading that, so I'm going to probably do what I can to read it. I have not found the place where Compass has posted the rules PDF, and I'm not sure if they're going to publish the Playbook PDF. They probably won't publicly. It will probably be on their game, the product site eventually, but it's not currently there. I think maybe it was, oh, you know what, it's probably on the Kickstarter page, but you can see, like, this is how things are set up. So you look at, okay, Warsaw Pact setup. What you're looking at are the units, and then they're going to have a location. So in this case, you have Northwestern Strategic Direction. You have a number of units, and they are set up in Poland, any hexes. For the Western Strategic Direction, they are going to go into Czechoslovakia or East Germany, depending on which units are which. So you kind of have to go through, find the units, set them up. Looks like there's even the player notes and player notes for a given scenario, so you can get a little bit of greater insight for the scenario that you're playing. Because again, there's 4 games in here, right? So there's player notes for this scenario, there's player notes for that scenario. There's a turn-by-turn reinforcement schedule for the scenario. So you can see there's just a lot in here. All of it good setup information and unit designation information. So 80 pages, 4 games worth of scenario information. Pretty good. Next up, we have what is a fold-out sheet that is the NATO setup display. So this is another way of doing setup illustration. So for several of these, it looks like they are hex specific. So for Battle for Germany, there's probably more specific setup information, and this will give you a way to pick out and find the counters that you need, set them on this maybe, and then you have a better sense of where they got to go get set up. So that's appreciated, always nice. Everything nice, full color, bright. Seems easy to read for the most part. Here's another one. This is a combined game setup display. Over here you can kind of see AF Cent, AF South, CENTCOM. So they just got a couple different sort of areas and commands that will have different units to be set up at the beginning of a particular scenario. Combined game NATO reinforcement display. So there's a setup display, and then this is your reinforcement display. So you could be setting both of these up if you got the table space. I would say this game is going to take up a whole room if you start playing with more than one map. If you're playing more of the combined game or multiple games together, because you need a lot of map space, and then you're going to need table space for these player aid charts and the air displays. You can see all this stuff for the reinforcements quite a bit. And then similarly, we've got the combined neutral setup display, quite a lot. This is going to be the Soviets, Warsaw Pact, Battle for Germany setup display. Again, all very similar. Very clear. Even calling out the special cases like can appear in any one city, or in any city, 1 per hex, blah, blah, blah. You have a southern front scenario, and let's see, southern front Balkan Entente scenario Warsaw setup display. Arctic front, as well as a Persian Gulf setup display. Some of these games are smaller than the others. Here's your Warsaw pack setup display for the combined game, so everything together. Here's your Persian Gulf for neutrals. Combined game Warsaw reinforcement display. Southern Front setup display for NATO, for Southern Front and the Balkan Entente scenario. And we've got some Arctic front for neutrals and NATO units that are dedicated to the Arctic front scenarios. You have an expanded sequence of play that is double-sided. So you can see here it's kind of walking you through things in relative detail, all starting with some of this for the initial segment, a packed impulse. So the interplay of the turn at a more detailed level. So if you're really new to the game, you're going to be stepping through that step by step. A combat odds track talks about how the combat stacks are going to work or the combat steps walk through, as well as a way to track the odds. So again, it's something you could set up. It's going to take up more table space. Maybe you don't need it if you just know how, if you're used to playing war games and you're just doing the odds and you can run through this very quickly. You may not need those sheets, but them being here is appreciated. Another sequence of play. Let's see, we've got a big old combat results table, player aid. So you have your nuclear war table, always interesting there. Air combat, air defense fire, I should say, combat results, proficiency, weather. This is one-sided, so it looks like intention is to set that up near or at the table. Another copy, slightly different shaded background, which I would interpret as this is the Soviet one. You have some factional data charts. Now, I'm not as familiar with what all this is going to mean ultimately and how to interpret these for the moment, because I'm not as familiar with the game's political rules and surrender rules, but two of these, they're also double-sided. On the back, it has a breakdown of the order of battle in terms of the different commands. So you can see there's that Nord Corps, Ost Corps for AF Cent, AF Cent, AF South, CENTCOM, all that good stuff. Still more player aid sheets. We have a map legend, so your terrain chart on the back gets in a little more of the data details of the hexes and how much they cost for movement, differentiating between mechanized units, motorized units, air mobile units, and leg movement. So 4 different types of movement. So there's 2 different of these. Shading appears to be NATO or Warsaw Pact oriented. This is a movement track for off-map movement. So you can see this is just to help, I guess, guide the movement. So once they go off somewhere, how soon are they going to come back somewhere else off-map? Chart for critical losses. You can see it shows different countries. For that, that's single-sided. We have a similar one here for this is the NATO one, so you can see there's like France and Belgium on there. Likewise, same thing. We have a game turn track where you can show the influence track for the countries from the Persian Gulf scenario, the nuclear war level, a few other things here, sea control. A display to have you be able to record your nuclear attack points and missiles, and a few other things like air transport and some holding boxes. Single-sided, so something you would set up, you guessed it, next to the map or near it. Here's the NATO version, straightforward. We have some more air displays, it looks like. So this is the, let's see if I can line these up appropriately. So this is the Eastern Europe, Northern Theater, Eastern Europe, and Western Europe theater display. So this is really your Battle for Germany one. There is the NATO version of that, so these would be paired together. And then we have, for this one, okay, so it looks like I ended up with a extra NATO air display, but you can see then there is the Warsaw, Balkan, or Southwestern, Western Asia, Balkan, and Persian Gulf, and then there's likewise a NATO one for all 4 of those theaters air display. So I think I just have an extra one, which I'd rather have extra than one less. Now, I'll probably need to go and do a checklist line by line, just make sure I have everything that I'm supposed to have, because it's one thing to be like, yeah, I've got my rulebook, I've got my playbook, I got my map, I got my player aid, and I've got everything in the game, right? For a lot of other games, a lot of smaller games, it's that much easier just to look quickly and say, hey, yeah, I think I've got everything. Here, it's a little trickier because there is just so much stuff to look at. Now, we're going to have a lot of the maps. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time just poking at these, but I do want to show this is one of our maps. So you can see the Persian Gulf, the Straits of Hormuz. I can't really get all of this on camera, so I think I'll fold some of it. You can see Turkestan, Turkmenistan, as part of the Soviet Union. You can see different hexes. There's an oil hex over here. There's a city, Ashgabat, and Mashhad. The terrain is really, straightforward, it looks like. There might be a couple where you're differentiating between this kind of mountain and that kind of mountain hex and rough. Some of these are a little close, but to me it reads fine, but as usual, your mileage may vary. So that's one of the Persian Gulf maps. Here is another, so this one's going to be a little bit more maybe familiar. So there's Tabriz, Tehran. You guys can't see it because it's like way down here. These maps are big. Like, this is a standard size map, by the way. I just picked this up and zoom out for it. That's a standard size map. And we're talking multiple standard size maps per game, and there's 4 games in this box. Gulf of Bothnia, sorry. You can see there's Stockholm. So this is this is a Arctic front map. And let's see if I can. Oh, this is it's part of the Arctic map, but really it's part of the Battle for Germany map. So if I zoom out for a second, you can see we have what is really the Soviet Union. So Carpathian Military District, Kiev, Belarusian, the Baltics up there, Eastern Germany. So it's really Battle for Germany map, my bad. This is a familiar sight, is it not? A little bit of Sicily, so we start getting into, they have the whole map of Italy on here. You see some terrain like mountain passes, which are better for movement, that are going to come in and out. Roma, here, Firenze. I'll move a little more quickly here, just due to time. You guys are watching each and every step of this, so you can see, there's a lot of map here, right? So for somebody like me who's used to playing, World in Flames, when I see the detail that they're willing to go to and across all these maps and how much map there actually is, There's just, this is going to be a big game. There's no getting around it. Okay, so then we're going to have the counters. Now, what's interesting is it looks like there's this one counter sheet that was put into a little plastic sleeve, and I don't know exactly why that is. I'm trying to see if there's anything particular. These look like, oh boy, they feel like they're going to come right out of the counter tray, the counter sheet rather. They're going to pop right out really easy. Maybe that's why they did this, so nothing would get loose. So there's some supplied markers. These look like, I'm not going to even guess, but markers of different denominations, it looks like. NATO control symbols, odds markers, a few other random markers, a couple of units for Persian Gulf scenario, I think. Oh no, those are US units. These, I think, may be for, oh no, wait, those are, oh yeah, those would be for Persian Gulf. A couple others, and then there is a whole mountain of other counter sheets here. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 counter sheets in one big plastic holder. So plus this makes 9 counter sheets. I think that's right in terms of what should be in the box. Let me see if I can get this open, and we'll take a look at some of these sheets. Oh yeah, I definitely get the feeling like these things are going to come out of counter sheet really easy, so you probably want to be careful. So these are very clearly a bunch of Soviet units. You can see it looks like the spacing on these are all good. I don't see any offenders of like shifted images where the counters are going to get cut off, so that's good. Oh, you can see there's a lot of data on these counters, but you know, the middle bar is really their identifier. The actual game, you know, besides the identifier, which you need for setup, there's color coding for the larger organizational unit that it's a part of, and then you have like your attack, defense, movement, the type of unit that it is, or what kind of movement that it has. Probably getting some of these values wrong, don't mind me, but you can see there's just a lot of different things. The backs of said counters similarly showing the information. So, whoop, oh man, I just about knocked this guy out of the sheet, this unit right here. So these are going to be really easy to punch, guys. Really easy. Watch your fingers. Don't lose something. Sheet 2. So we have more Soviets, a lot of their air units. And then we get a lot of these other Bulgarians. It looks like Polish, Israeli units, Finnish units. Either Iraq or Iran. I'm not sure how they've chosen to do. Oh, okay, so this is probably Iraq. This is probably Iran. And Saudi Arabia, probably Saudi Arabia. SA for some of these units. It's going to be hard until I'm making guesses, so I don't want to be too cavalier. Counter sheet 3. You can see these guys are going to just fall right out. They're very well cut, but that just means that you want to be careful when you're actually getting them out, so you don't lose them on the floor somewhere, like I could if I'm not careful here. So a lot of stuff here. I don't see, again, not seeing any issues in terms of the spacing. They all appear to be pretty solid. Nothing sticking out as a problem. Maybe the closest thing would be this one's a little close to the edge, but it's fortunately it's fine. Really watching out for, are there any big nasty problems? But I don't really see anything that's sticking out as a big problem, a big uh-oh. Looks like we got some more sort of game markers. There's a whole slew of them, obviously. So there's different ones for weather, craters, status markers. flag markers for different countries. More of these markers, more of these markers, more of these markers. So yeah, there's definitely, when I look at these, it seems like there's a whole lot of Russians. That's probably appropriate, right? But a lot of other countries. So lots of counters. If you're going to be punching these counters, the task of punching will be easy. I think the task of sort of organizing them may be a little bit different. And spend some time going through those. I'm not sure if those are going to need punched at all, because it definitely felt like there was a decent quality to the overall counters. They're pretty thick. They're thicker brown core counters, so you're going to be able to, they're not going to be flimsy counters, that's for sure. So, I know there's sometimes some, I guess, caution on some of these, designer signature editions. I know that some folks, like for the Korean War, had some issues with counters that I think Compass took care of pretty well for most folks, and folks got either fixed counters or whatever the case has been. It doesn't appear like this game is going to have any of those problems. And just truly, when I'm trying to put all these player aid sheets back in the box, they really went all out in terms of filling this game with, doing the reprint, but ensuring that there was just a mountain of components to help you play the game, to make it the best versions of the game. Now, whether, it all holds up to gameplay, right? I mean, it's still the basic game. I don't think they made any major changes to the game rules. It is the game. And I would really like to try a few things out. I think the trick's going to be the big maps. These are very big maps. They're going to be a tough thing to get if you're going to do the whole campaign game. The nice thing is you don't have to play the whole campaign game. You can just pick something of interest. I think the Persian Gulf one in particular is very interesting because of those political diplomacy rules. I think that'd be really, really fun. The Arctic Front, just for something very different than I think what most folks are used to, unless you're playing, a lot of Norway focused games for a World War II operational kind of thing. Battle for Germany, I mean, everyone wants to do that. Southern Front, another little bit of a different one. So just, being able to pick and choose, what do you want to play? You can do some additive things. You can play that while there's not a scenario that would play these two together, Arctic and Persian, it's not like you couldn't set them up separately and try to, you could probably figure out a way to do that. I don't want to guarantee that because maybe there's some unit dependencies, but overall, you've got a lot of game here, and the full campaign game is going to be comparable in terms of just the size and effort as a lot of other big games, right? You could definitely do the combined game and have that be a prolonged gaming event, either at a convention or at home over time. So excited to try this one out. I do want to look to see, what's the smallest scenario that I could start with and maybe do a playthrough series on this, but have been waiting a while for this guy. Looking forward to playing it. I need to play NATO, The Cold War Goes Hot as well, and maybe even compare the Battle for Germany against NATO and kind of see how they compare and how they choose to do things differently. All future stuff, guys. So I hope this was useful. This is a long unboxing video, but again, this game has a lot of stuff, so if you weren't sure about whether or not you're going to get the game, I think, hopefully this is enough to give you, push you in one direction or the other. So 1989, the world stands on the brink of Armageddon. The Third World War, published by Compass Games, game designed by Frank Chadwick. Check it out, guys. And until next time, take care. Keep on gaming.